Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in this House today to speak once more on Bill C-93, an act to provide no-cost expedited record suspensions for simple possession of cannabis. Mr. Speaker, I was splitting my time with the member from Elgin, Middlesex, London. As I said last week, Mr. Speaker, this is a terrible bill. Kind of reminds me of the NAFTA bill. Sometimes a bill is better than no bill. As I've said many times in this House, Mr. Speaker, I was never in favor of the legalization of marijuana, Bill C-43. Another typical bill, ill-conceived and thought out by this Liberal government. But as I said before, I will support this bill because there is a common sense element to it. As I just said, I did not support legalization, but I am not naive to think that this was not right to relook at the whole cannabis strategy in Canada. Let's face it, Mr. Speaker, we are not the only ones. Many other countries have been legalized or decriminalizing marijuana. We only have to look at our closest and best trading partners, the good old US of A. The use of marijuana has been legalized and decriminalized, for example, in Alaska, California, Colorado, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, even the District of Columbia, Marina Islands, and in Guam. Many of these jurisdictions are looking at or have commenced programs to get rid of the old cannabis-related charges for simple possession charges in their applicable areas. There are several different programs being looked at. Some are similar to this Bill C-93. Some are similar to what the NDP party has been pushing, expungement. You know, Mr. Speaker, we have heard from many of my colleagues in this House speaking about the injustices that have been taking place regarding Canadians who have old records regarding marijuana possession going back. Stories have been told in this House about people being turned back at the US border. But you know, in my research, I have found the same things are happening in the United States. And I'm going to give you two cases. We have heard this before for our people, but just not south of the border. I'm not going to give their names to protect their identities, but a 70-year-old retired carpenter in the United States who once ran for the Senate was convicted back in 1968 for simple possession. His conviction has caused him to be refused entry into Canada, and he is unable to purchase a firearm in the United States. There is another gentleman who is a professional lighting technician. He actually worked for Willie Nelson for a time. Because of a misdemeanor drug charge as a youth, he was unable to accompany the band on tour to Canada. So I believe strongly that we need to remove the records for individuals in Canada who were charged for simple possession of marijuana or cannabis. Clearing people's records can remove barriers to employment and housing. There are many groups in Canada who have become victims because of the area they live in and the environment around them. Many of them are basically good people who just made the wrong choice at the wrong time. That is why I support C-93, although I feel this bill did not go far enough. It should have and could have looked at many minor criminal code offenses, such as public mischief, willful damage, offenses we call misdemeanors in the criminal code. There is always room to fix things, and maybe sometimes in the future, C-93 could be fixed. Mr. Speaker, the state of California, and I spoke about this last week, has brought out a program called Code for America, Clear My Record. This is a computerized program that allows for the expedient removal of simple criminal code records, such as simple possession of marijuana. Mr. Speaker, from the list of states I mentioned previously, and nearly every state have passed laws that allow people to clear or change their criminal records. They recognize the impact on the economy and on the lives of the families when millions are shut out of the workforce or unable to fully reintegrate into their communities because of criminal records from their past. Now, I say this because I was shocked to learn in my research on Bill C-93 that 1 in 3 people have a criminal record in the United States. But what I also discovered was that those states that had a cumbersome, overly complicated system of removing one's record failed in their goals. Only a small fraction of the tens of millions of eligible Americans benefited from these laws, directly related to overcomplicated, costly, and that it took too much time to do. Code of America, a computerized system that was adopted by California, is a modern 21st century technology that is quick, efficient, and benefits the recipients. Clear My Record is a free online tool assisting people in California with navigating the complicated process of clearing their records. People can fill out a short, easy to understand application online that typically takes 10 minutes to get connected to a legal authority. Jasmine Latimer and Ben Golder, who co-developed the program, realized there was a problem when they looked into how many people were taking advantage of getting their records expunged. What they found, Madam Speaker, was less than 8% of the people who qualified received it or accomplished it, simply because the system was, for one, opaque, hard to understand, hard to navigate, and costly, both for the people with the records and for the government. Does this sound like Bill C-93? It very much does. So, Mr. Speaker, I made recommendations to Bill C-93 during the committee that the Canadian Parole Board look at some electronic means of modernizing the way we do business. We are still following 20th century technology, trying to do too much by hand. Why? I could not get an answer for that. The state of California, who has implemented the electronic process, has plans to try to clear over 250,000 cannabis-related convictions by 2020. That's probably as many as we have in Canada, if not a lot more. I hope they succeed. And I hope, Madam Speaker, our parole board looks to an electronic process for Canadians with old possession charges, and to expand in the future to look at other minor criminal code offenses. Madam Speaker, we owe it to Canadians to make this system as simple, free, to get rid of those records so that they can live better lives and be of less of a burden on society. Thank you, Madam Speaker.